Hello, welcome to We Draw More. My name's Phil, and this is Alternatives to Top Ranked Commanders, Episode 6. In these videos, I look at the top ranked commanders on EDHREC. I look for alternatives to play instead of that commander and pick one, and then I also choose some cards that I think would make good additions to a deck if you were to make it for that alternative. Number 6 on the EDHREC top play commanders list is Pantlaza Sun-Favoured. Pantlaza Sun-Favoured is a 4/4 dinosaur that costs 2 colours and Naya, that's red, green, white, and they have whenever Pantlaza Sun-Favoured or another dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may discover X, where X is that creature's toughness. Do this only once each turn. To discover, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with that mana value or less, and you cast it without paying its mana cost, or you put it into your hand, and you put the rest of them on the bottom of your library in a random order. The Pantlaza wants us to get high toughness dinosaurs into play so that we can trigger their discover ability so that we can put more high toughness dinosaurs into play so that we can then attack with those dinosaurs and eventually win by smashing face. To that end, the biggest dinosaur I can think of, and probably one of the easiest to get into play, is Gulta Primal Hunger. Gulta Primal Hunger is a 12/12 Elder Dinosaur for 10 colourless and 2 green. However, it has this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. It also has Trample. So if you can get Gulta Primal Hunger into play for less than its total 12 mana value, it has 12 toughness, so it will allow you to discover 12. Now we are going to be looking at adding cards to the deck that are such things as Mana Dorks that are going to make our dinosaurs cheaper and may also have other abilities. That hopefully will then enable us to get Gulta into play to get the ball rolling with Pantlaza. And if we do manage to get the ball rolling with Pantlaza, then I can imagine the sort of dinosaur that we're going to want to be putting into play for free is something like Zakama Primal Calamity. Zakama is 6 colours and Naya, and they're a 9/9 Elder Dinosaur with Vigilance, Reach and Trample. And they have, when Zakama Primal Calamity enters the battlefield, if you cast it, remember we are casting from exile, so they would be cast, untap all lands you control. They then have 3 additional abilities that we could use that additional mana to trigger. As I mentioned, in order to get these dinosaurs into play so that we can get Pantlaza running, and even possibly to get Pantlaza into play in the first place, we need to use cards like EDHREC Huntmaster. EDHREC Huntmaster is a 1/2 human shaman for 1 colourless and red, and has dinosaur spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It also has tap. Target dinosaur gains haste until end of turn. But not only does it help you get your dinosaurs into play so you can trigger Pantlaza so that you get the discover ability, you can also then tap EDHREC Huntmaster and attack with that particularly large dinosaur at the same time. Another option would be to play Mana Dorks, such as Ixali's Lawkeeper. Ixali's Lawkeeper is a 1/1 human druid for 1 green and has tap. Add 1 mana of any colour, spend this mana only to cast a dinosaur spell or activate an ability of a dinosaur source. Another card I came across which I thought would be very powerful in the Pantlaza deck is Curator of Sun's Creation. Curator of Sun's Creation is a 3/3 human artificer for 3 colourless and red, and has whenever you discover again for the same value. This ability triggers only once each turn. So you can discover twice. If you're discovering 12 twice, you're putting 2 extra dinosaurs into play, and you're getting huge amounts of upside from Pantlaza's ability. We also might want to consider playing something like Descendant's Path. Descendant's Path is 2 colourless and green, and it's an enchantment that has at the beginning of your upkeep reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card that shares a creature type with a creature you control, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast it, put it on the bottom of your library. The Descendant's Path allows us to cast a dinosaur for free if we have a dinosaur in play, and then if we cast that dinosaur for free, we can then trigger Pantlaza Sun-Favoured's Discover ability and get another dinosaur for free. Another card I thought would be very powerful in a Pantlaza deck would be Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. Vivian is a planeswalker that is 2 and green and comes into play with 4 loyalty counters on them. They have you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. Pantlaza's Discover ability only happens once each turn, but if you can cast your creature spells as though they have flash, you can cast them on your opponent's turns, which in turn will trigger Pantlaza's Discover ability additional times throughout the round. Vivian Champion of the Wilds also has a -2 ability which is useful, which is look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile 1 face down and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as it remains exiled, you may look at that card and may cast it if it's a creature spell. So you can put creature spells into exile, and then when you're ready to cast them with flash on an opponent's turn, you can then do so. Pantlaza is one of the strongest dinosaur tribal commanders in Magic the Gathering, and that's why it's 6th ranked on EDHREC. Any deck you build with Pantlaza will be designed to get big dinosaurs into play for free, and then you'll be able to attack with them, smash face and win the game, and then you'll be able to say, Me Grimlock, me king! However, Grimlock isn't actually a Commander legal card, although I'm sure your playgroup will let you play with him. Pantlaza is a little bit like Kaalia. Kaalia allows us to get into play dragons, demons, and angels for free, and Pantlaza does the same for dinosaurs. There are alternatives for putting creatures into play, but they're going to be much the same as I recommended for Kaalia. For example, we have Arthur Marigold Knight, who is 2 in Jeskai and is a 4/5 mouse knight, and they have haste. And they have, whenever they attack with another creature, you can look at the top 6 cards of your library, you can put one of those into play tapped and attacking, and you put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The downside of Arthur is that the creature that you put into play doesn't get to stick around, but you are playing blue and white, so therefore you could always blink that card to shake off that requirement to return it back to your hand at the end of combat. We could also look at considering Shadowfax Lord of Horses. Shadowfax is 3 in Boros, and there are 4/4 horse with horses you control have haste, which includes themselves, and they have whenever Shadowfax Lord of Horses attacks, you may put a creature card with lesser power from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. In this case, the downside is that you really need to pump Shadowfax, so it's got a much greater power when it's attacking, so that you can put bigger creatures into play with its ability. Another consideration is Mr. Foxglove, who is 2 in Jeskai for a 3/5 Fox Rogue with lifelink. Now, Mr. Foxglove is the alternative that I picked to Kaalia, and if you want to know more about how I would play Mr. Foxglove, I recommend you go and check out that video. The link will be in the description below. I've already covered commanders that put cards into play for free. I don't particularly want to go down the route of picking a different dinosaur or tribal commander because I feel that that's something that's already been solved, and Pantlaza is probably the best at that there is anyway. So that left me with only one option, and that was to look for an alternative commander that would discover. And I had a look around and I came up with the solution of Alloy, Saviour of Meridian. Alloy is a 3/5 human warrior for 3 and Simic, and they have vigilance and reach, and in you, all things are possible. Whenever one or more artifact creatures you control attack, discover X where X is the greatest power among them. So the differences here are that Alloy is looking for artifacts that are attacking, not entering play, and she's also looking at their power, not their toughness. However, she still gets to discover in the same way. The first card I thought of when I thought of Alloy is Traxos, Scourge of Krug, mainly because it looks like it's straight out of the Horizon series. Traxos is 4 colourless for a 7/7 artifact construct with trample, and it has the downside that Traxos Scourge of Krug enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. However, it also has, whenever you cast a historic spell, untap Traxos. And historic spells are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. If we cast our mind back, we remember that when we discover, we cast from exile, and if we are discovering artifacts, then we're able to untap Traxos. So I can see that the play pattern would go, we attack with Traxos, we get our discover X for 7, we then cast an artifact from exile, we then get to untap Traxos so that we can attack with them the following turn. Another card that I thought would be very powerful in an Alloy deck would be Khan Legacy Reforged. Khan is a star golem for 5 colourless, where Khan's power and toughness are each equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. Khan also has, at the beginning of your upkeep, add a number of colourless mana for each artifact you control. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells, and until end of turn you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. If you're playing an artifact deck and you have things like mana rocks in play and smaller artifact creatures, then the amount of mana that Khan is going to produce will be quite considerable, and you can use that to cast big enough artifacts that you can attack with to get a decent discover trigger off of Alloy. Third up on my list of cards to consider with Alloy is Ancient Stone Idol. Ancient Stone Idol is 12/12 golem for 10 colourless mana, and they have flash. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature, and trample, and when Ancient Stone Idol dies, create a 6/12 colourless construct artifact creature token with trample. The idea with Ancient Stone Idol is that you cast it when your opponents declare their attackers, but before you declare blockers on their turn. So they're attacking to you, thinking that they're fine and dandy to attack. You cast Ancient Stone Idol because it has flash, and it is cheaper because they're attacking you, and then you block whichever creature you choose with your 12/12 Ancient Stone Idol, and you'll likely kill their creature. If not, Ancient Stone Idol dies and puts a token into play anyway. If you do keep Ancient Stone Idol into play, then the next turn you attack back and you get to discover 12. There are a couple of artifacts I wanted to mention that are in the colours of Simic. The first up is Omega Heartless Evolution, which is 5 in Simic. which is an 8/8 robot with wave cannon. When Omega enters, for each opponent, tap up to one target non-land permanent that opponent controls, put X stun counters on each of those permanents, and you gain X life, where X is the number of non-basic lands you control. In Modern Commander, we do play with a lot of non-basic lands, so X I think will be quite large, and by stunning their commanders if they need to attack with them, or stunning an important piece on their battlefield, they're not able to untap with that until they remove all of the stun counters from it. You're also playing an 8/8 creature, which is great for your Discover when you attack with it. Another creature I thought would be great for the Discover trigger is Inkwell Leviathan. Inkwell Leviathan is 7 colourless and 2 blue for a 7/11 Leviathan and has Island Walk and Trample and Shroud. This creature can't be the target of spells or abilities. Short of a board wipe, Inkwell Leviathan is almost impossible to get rid of. It has a very high toughness and therefore would need to be blocked by more than 11 power. It also has Island Walk, so if your opponents have islands in play, it can attack unblocked. And it also has Trample, so it's going to get some of that 7 power through when it gets blocked anyway. Inkwell Leviathan is also another good target for Alloy's Discover X ability. Another creature I thought would be a good target for that, and a creature I absolutely love, is Mere Battlesphere. Mere Battlesphere is a 4/7 Mere construct for 7 colourless mana and has, when this creature enters, create 4/1/1 colourless Mere artifact creature tokens. It also has, whenever this creature attacks, you may tap X, untap Mere you control. If you do, this creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. So the sequence goes that you attack with Mere Battlesphere, you tap the 4 Mere tokens that you put into play. Mere Battlesphere becomes an 8/7, which is a great target for your Discover on Alloy, and it also does 4 damage to the player you're attacking. Speaking of Mere, we can actually use Mere as mana dorks in the deck. One of my favourite in this case would be Palladium Mere, which is a 2/2 Mere for 3 colourless, which has tap, add 2 colourless. In the early game we can tap it to cast things like Mere Battlesphere, and in the late game if we don't need the mana we can tap it to pump Mere Battlesphere when we're attacking with it. Another good source of tapping for colourless mana is Osgood Operation Double, who is 2 colourless and 2 blue, and they are a 2/2 human alien shapeshifter, and they have, when you cast this spell, create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary. Tap, add colourless, spend this mana only to cast an artifact spell or activate an ability of an artifact. They also have Paradox. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, investigate. So you'll have 2 Osgoods in play. You can tap both of them to give you 2 colourless mana to help you cast your artifacts, but also when you do get your Discover trigger from Alloy, you are casting a spell from exile, which triggers the Paradox ability on Osgood twice, which means you get to investigate twice as well. If we are tapping things for colourless mana, then another great artifact to play would be Forsaken Monument. Forsaken Monument is a legendary artifact for 5 colourless and has several abilities, the first of which is colourless creatures you control get +2/+2. So it acts as a great anthem effect, which also helps with your Discover X. And it also has, whenever you tap a permanent for colourless, add an extra colourless. So if you tap Osgood for 1 colourless, you'll get 2. If you attack Palladium Mere for 2 colourless, you'll get 3. Forsaken Monument has a third ability, which is whenever you cast a colourless spell, you gain 2 life, but the life gain is incidental and isn't really why we're playing it. Another card I thought would be a great addition to Alloy is Idol of False Gods. Idol of False Gods is an artifact Eldrazi for 2 colourless mana, and it has 1 generic and 1 colourless. Tap. Create a 0/1 colourless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add colourless. It then has, whenever another Eldrazi you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Idol of the False Gods. And finally it has, as long as Idol of the False Gods has 8 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it is a 0/0 creature in addition to its other types, and it has Annihilator too. So you can use Idol of the False Gods to create Eldrazi spawn creature tokens, which you will eventually sacrifice to help cast a bigger artifact, and then you'll start to put +1/+1 counters on Idol of the False Gods. Once Idol of the False God becomes a creature with 8 +1/+1 counters on it, that Annihilator 2 will have your opponents quaking in fear. Idol of the False Gods is a ticking time bomb that your opponents have to answer. The difficulty is they won't be able to agree who should answer it, because whoever answers it will end up down a spell, which works in your favour because the spell they use to take out Idol of the False Gods isn't a spell that they're using to take out one of your other artifact creatures. Finally, I'd like to just highlight Lithoform Engine. Lithoform Engine is 4 colourless for a legendary artifact, and it has 3 abilities. The middle ability is only so-so. It's 3 tap, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. In this deck, that's not what we're looking at. However, the first and the third abilities are absolutely amazing. The first ability is 2 tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Alloy's whenever ability, i.e. her Discover ability, is a triggered ability. So when that goes on the stack, you can pay 2 and tap Lithoform Engine, and you can copy it, which means you get to discover twice. Lithoform Engine's fourth ability is 4, tap, copy target permanent spell you control. In brackets it reads the copy becomes a token. So your other option is once you've discovered with Alloy and you have cast from exile that creature, you can pay for, tap Lithoform Engine, copy that target spell, and when that creature resolves, you can put a token copy of it into play. Either way, you are doubling the value you're going to get from Alloy. I thought Alloy was a great alternative to Pantlaza, but I am interested in what you think, so why don't you let me know in the comments. Also, if you've enjoyed this, please don't forget to like and subscribe and click on the bell, so that way you get notifications when I release new videos.